Welcome again to another episode of Global Conversations. This is André Darmanin at the helm, if you will. So today we are delving into the heart of human-centric organizations with purpose. I'm beyond thrilled to have Ignatia Mannoe in our midst, the mighty change maker and co-founder of IK Boost, and a mover and shaker in the world of diversity, inclusion, and transformation. Ignatia's passion for creating safe and inclusive environments stems from a belief that everyone should feel valued and respected, regardless of their background or identity. Only then can town thrive to its fullest, shine bright, bring different perspectives, problem solving, well-being, happy employees, and eventually high-performing employees. Ignatia is a firm believer in the power of diversity and inclusion, and she champions a human-centric approach to business, paving the way for organizations to thrive through innovation, collaboration, and mutual gain. Welcome, Ignatia.
Thank you. Thank you for your nice introduction.
Thank you. Thank you for being my guest. And I'm looking forward to this conversation. And so, you and I have known each other for quite some time. And we both discovered each other through social media. And like I said, I wanted to have you as my guest for quite some time. And, I've been going through your career and stuff, seeing what you post and whatnot. And, I know you are a champion of psychological safety, which we'll get into throughout the webcast. But as a icebreaker, if you will, I want people to understand who you are, right? Your self-introduction. I gave us a brief introduction of who you are.
The business one.
Right? Now
Yes.
we'll get into who is Ignatia. Share a glimpse of who you are, your journey, and what led you to where you are today in the last few decades of your career.
First of all, thank you for inviting me in your podcast. I'm really happy to be here. And what a nice question. So I was thinking about this question, and I was like, where did I start? And I'm from the Netherlands. I have been born and raised in Rotterdam. And we were just chatting about Rotterdam. It's really a multicultural city. So I also am raised in an area where I was raised in, and they call it the hood, actually. So I never felt different because everyone was different, and we respected each other. We ate all each other's food. So it was like Turkish, Moroccan, Dutch. It was everything mixed up. So that's my background. And when I started to work, suddenly I felt in the corporate world, I was the person who was different. So that was really a change. Like, okay, I'm different. Why am I different? Why? So I really felt that I'm different, and I really worked as an internal auditor. So in the Netherlands at that time, about 16 years ago, it was mainly men dominated. So there I was, like brown skin, female, and asking all those different questions and difficult questions to directors and C-level. And they were like, okay, who are you? What's your education? So I really felt they were treating me differently. And I really loved my job. So I started to do my job and started to have the conversation. People respected me because they saw, okay, she is also clever enough to to do this audit. And during my career, I felt like, oh, no, I'm not the only one. Because when I had cultural audit or soft control audit, I really saw people struggling being themselves. And there was a lot of potential in people. But the potential wasn't coming above the iceberg. And I was wondering, why is that? So I really wanted to tag in that and discover what is it that people don't thrive. So that's actually my passion. And about 4 years ago, I was like, okay, I can be an internal auditor and say like, okay, these are the root causes, but I really want to make the difference. I want to give sound and voice to those who find it difficult to go and get on stage and to make them voice louder, etc. So that's my passion. So that's a little bit because of my background, where I grew up, where everyone was like different but still the same, and then coming into a corporate environment and feeling different. So I really want to make the change that people feel welcome.
Yeah. And no, that's something that's pretty important, especially in the work that we do, because we want to create a sense of belonging within our organizations, right? And like I said, create that psychological safety for people to feel comfortable to talk about who they really are, and but also too. So speaking of that moment of who you are, if I were to come to you in Rotterdam and say, Ignatia, what is something that I don't know about you that I should know, or other people should know about you, that makes you unique? What makes you different? What people don't know about you normally?
Well, there's something that I didn't know about myself
Yeah.
like 1 year ago. So I did a DNA test because I
Mm-hmm.
was really curious about my roots.
Yeah.
And as you know, I'm really a D&I person, so I'm really into minority people and giving them a voice. But it was quite shocking for me to discover that not only am I have a background with slavery, so my
Mm-hmm.
grandparents and great grandparents have a slavery background, but also the slaveholders. So it
Mm-hmm.
was really shocking for me, like, okay, so I'm both.
Yeah.
And that's something that you cannot see if you look at me like, oh, okay, she might be something Asian, or she might be something from Suriname, but
Mm-hmm.
you cannot see it. And that was really something for me, like, okay, I am both. And I have to accept that, respect that, acknowledge that. And really, this is something that I can make a difference on, because when people see
Mm-hmm.
me, they will see something. And I
Yeah.
can tell them, like, well, don't judge the book by its cover.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's something that not a lot of people know about me. Now they know because of this. But that's something that I really discovered about myself, and accepting that, and also understanding the other side.
Yeah. And that's a conversation that I constantly have with a lot of people, because myself, I'm also biracial. I have, I not only have indigenous roots within the Caribbean, but as well as, given the fact that there's some lineage towards the slaveholders, but as well as the fact that I have European descent, not only through there but also through my father. So these are things that that we come to grips with, and then there's always that backlash of oh, you don't understand what we go through and whatnot. But like you said, we fully understand what you go through. We may have a different perspective, but
Yeah.
this is how we approach it, and we see both sides of how to approach any situation, especially in EDI work. So no, it was great to hear that, to know that you and I have similarities in that respect, which is good to hear. And this is the work that we love to do and whatnot. So getting into the people-centric or human-centric focus of organizations, the general topic of our conversation today. Give the audience, or myself as well, a sense of what do you feel that is an important, rock solid sense of purpose to make any business or any organization truly people focused. What does that look like to you?
So actually, if you like dive into corporate companies, or even if you go to the more governance related companies, you will always see that they have like great lines and visions about how they are human focused, and that they are more people driven.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's quite easy to write it down and to publish it. But if you are really people focused as a company or organization, how can you see that? So how is it visible? You can say it, but how is it embedded in your processes? How is it embedded in all the journeys that you have? How do people do they really feel welcome? So if you are a people-driven organization, or if you claim to be a people organization, actually, if I walk into your building, I should already feel it. So it's not only write it down, but it's a feeling when people just enter it. For example, I might have a handicap, and if I enter your building and it's really
Mm-hmm.
difficult for me to enter the building,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but you're not people orientated, because you're focusing on a little group and you're forgetting minority groups as well. So if you really want to be a people organization, it's not only about the structure, It's not only about the processes, it's not only about the behavior, but it's also about what do I see? Is it accessible? So I think it should be in all of the things that you do as an organization, also the way how you approach people on social media. What's your social identity as a company as well? So I think if you really are people driven, you should also focus on the different life cycles that employees go through. So for example, if I have a sick daughter, how are the regulations within the company? For example, if I lose someone who's dear to me, if I'm pregnant, all those things for me are things that can really provide something and can really show that you are people driven and that you are have people driven purpose as well.
And as you talked about social identity, and where we've had organizations who just drop certain things, like remember back in the day when they had the black box for to promote during the Grammy period in terms of the music industry, or you have recently with the Bud Light and transgender and whatnot, but yet easily on a snap of a finger they would just reverse everything, right? Not with the black box so much. There was some backlash then, but also with Bud Light and whatnot. So I'm just thinking to myself, first of all, what would you say that when it comes to action, do you have any thoughts on closing that gap and actually for these types of organizations, regardless of nonprofit business, public or private sector, if you will, in terms of closing that gap, what do you think should happen there?
I think, first of all, put your money where your mouth is. And I think that's one of the most important things. And if you want to close that gap, you should really include people as well. So not only like that you give an assignment to the marketing department, but also have conversations with people within your company, because they are actually a vision of what's outside of the company. But also invite customers or potential customers and just have a conversation about it and just have a more inclusive decision making on how you put messages outside of the world. And also one thing that I really think is important is that show your vulnerability as a company as well. If you make mistakes, because people make mistakes, companies make mistakes as well, just show your vulnerability and say, okay, we messed up. This was not our intention to do this. But if you can show the vulnerability, that it's also something that you are being a social partner, that you are someone who can learn, you can make mistakes. And I think if you can reflect that, and that if people can see that, it's more how you say it, authentic. So put your money where your mouth is. It's okay to make mistakes, not all mistakes, of course, but if you make mistakes, just say, yes, we made a mistake, please help us to make it better. How can we do it better? So it's being open, it's being transparent, it's being also open, like, okay, we're not there yet. I think that's one of the first steps that companies should really dare. So it's not only care on paper, but also dare to say that you're not there yet, dare to say that you need help, dare to say that you're in the journey as well.
No, that is so true, because when you think about it from the perspective of having a mission, having a vision for an organization, but yet people don't understand, how does their own personal mission and vision align to the organization, but as well as having their sense of purpose within an organization. Because a lot of people, especially earlier in their careers, they're still trying to define themselves. They're still trying to figure out, okay, is this the right organization I should be in? Is this the right career path I am? And as we progress in our careers, we start to define ourselves by a purpose, right? And we decided, and one of the things you had mentioned about, again, is being socially driven. And so let's take it from the leaders of the organization and throughout the organization to just a entry level staff. So let's start with the leaders. Like I said, how can they create that sense of purpose through their culture?
Well, I think leaders have a crucial role in making an environment or providing psychological safe measurements within the team. So I think they really have a really important role as well. But that's not only the leader, it's also the team members and the individual also in the company. So as a leader, you should create a sense of belonging. You should actually, how do you say it? You should really stand out like these are our company's values. I believe in them. You have like tone at the top. You really show that you are living through those values as well. If you are a leader and you don't show those values, people within your team will not believe it. And they will say like, okay, you say this, but you act like this. So that will not be relatable for them as well. So I think really you have to lead by example, first of all. As a leader, you also have to be vulnerable and reflective. You have to ask feedback. You have to be vulnerable to ask feedback and make sure that people feel safe enough to give feedback.
Yeah.
It's about when they make mistakes, are you open enough to learn from those mistakes? Do people want to speak up? If they don't want to speak up, do you really want to engage? So the leader can really have an important role in this as well. But also, I think the teacher, the leader is also a teacher. So he can really coach and facilitate how other team leaders can speak up. He can help. He can make people more responsible as well for creating this safe and inclusive environment. And be aware, if you want to work on a safe environment and you will just start, it will be really uncomfortable. People will say things and they will not have like those skills yet to say it in a more connective way. So at first you will have like a peak and people will be mad at each other and they will say, oh, you don't talk like me like that. So you have to facilitate it as a leader as well. So you prepare yourself. So working on it means also being prepared to feel the uncomfortable setting as well.
Yeah. And I know that, from our conversations in the past and seeing where you stand, especially when it comes to psychological safety, this is your, as we call, this is your jam. This is something that you take pride on,
it's
right?
So important. Yes, it's so important.
And this is where I'm going to get that passion out of you, because this is something that we want to talk about, because, human-centric organizations, you really need to have, like you mentioned, that psychological safety. So, but a lot of people don't really understand it, or, just, I believe it was earlier this year, Harvard Business Review had posted an article mentioning that what does it mean to have too much psychological safety? And I've seen that come around. I mean, yes, we've, I had an earlier conversation last season about psychological safety. Actually, sorry, it was this season. My bad. And then of course Amy Edmondson's book on psychological safety in the workplace and how to create that. But then, like I said, then there are people who come out and talk about the fact that that there's too much psychological safety. Now, is there, when we're trying to build purpose-driven organizations and human-centric organizations, even more so, is there really such a thing as too much psychological safety, or is there a certain balance that you can have in terms of that? That's something I'm curious about.
Interesting point of view. I think we call it psychological safety, but actually psychological safety should be like something that's integrated in your daily work.
Yeah.
And it should be integrated as you as a person as well. And psychological safety also relies on your friendships, but also at home for your family. You have like actually the same situation. So I think that psychological safety is something that we as human always we really want to have a sense of a belonging. We really want to be inclusive. So that's our human part as well. So having too much psychological safety, I don't know. I don't know if it's ever enough that when people don't feel good, when you have a feedback on a product or on a project, can it be too much to share your feedback? Of course, I think you can have feedback, and then you can. Some people say, well, it will slow down the decision-making process as well. So that's the other side of it. But if you have that's why I also believe in structure, not only culture, but also structure. If you decide okay, this is our structure, we will take this much time to guide and provide all the feedback that we need, say yes or no, and then we go. So you can also structure it that you won't lose a lot of time. So I think, yes, you can balance it as well. Yes, if you have constantly feedback without rules, because if you don't have rules, of course you get stuck. So I think all those elements of psychological safety, giving feedback, learning from each other, being open, being inclusive, they should all be in a good balance. If you have too much of feedback and you don't have we want to deliver, we want to have a positive impact, then of course it will be off balance. So I really believe that everything should be in balance, and you should reflect as a team, is it in balance, or yes or no?
Yeah, and that's that's something that we try to strive on, is how do you get that right balance in terms of what does the company's mission, or what is their purpose in their organization, versus not even versus, but how to integrate people in terms of their work. And that's something that we seem to forget, is that it's a two-way street. We talk so much about it in relationship building, right? And you've done that relationship building in your work, through your events, through your consultations and whatnot. And that's something that we need to bring into the organizations, to fully understand who they are, and being, like you said, being authentic, right? And I think that's critical in that conversation.
And also, as when we have okay, this is our purpose, and we write it down. But what do we really mean? What kind of behavior do we expect from our employees? What kind of behavior do we expect from our leaders? If you're not clear on that, then you cannot you cannot take responsibility. To say, for example, oh, we really want to be an outspoken company. Okay, so what's outspoken? Can we just say everything that we like without having respect norms? What is it? So you really have to be concrete on what's the purpose. How do we want to see it? What's the behavior? How do we assess it as well? And if people don't meet up with those requirements, how do we have the conversation about it? Will we sanction, or will we have a conversation? So you have to really be clear also in your processes and systems as well. It should be really aligned with each other.
Yeah. And so even going back to the leadership aspect, what I'm hearing and seeing is that there's not a lot of people out there who are trained or knowledgeable of this work. Managers, we're reading that managers are burnt out. They're not really ready to be managers. Leaders are not fully aware of psychological safety. So, in your experience, what does it take for someone to be even knowledgeable of it? I mean, you can read books, you can listen to podcasts, you can have empathy and whatnot, but is there a secret recipe, if you will, in your opinion, when it comes to that commonality with psychological safety, if you will?
Well, I really believe that you, as a leader, you need daring leadership. So I think a lot of organizations are filled with people with daring leadership, but you have to come to the understanding that caring leadership is as important as well. So that's the first thing. I think there's also something for an organization to really put down that we need caring leadership. We also need daring leadership. And what do we expect from you as a leader? I think if you look at some people, they have this naturally. So, for example, for me, I'm really, first of all, I'm a more caring leader. But that doesn't mean that I don't need a lot more daring training. So be specific and reflect and assess on what is it that a leader prefers. So if you have that insight, you can teach onboard your leaders to learn and to close that gap from your preferred way of leading. So that's actually a responsibility of the company.
Yeah.
That's first of all the responsibility of the company to make sure what are the lines, that what do we expect from you, to give them training and to give them to train the skills as well. But you as a leader, you're a human being. You should be curious. If you want to be a leader, you are working with people as well. So how can you balance that? So you have to have the learning agility as well as I think that's one of the most important skills. Do you want to learn? Do you want to change? Do you want to inspire people as well? So you have to be quite honest and have self-reflection as well. And sometimes that's hard. So a company can help you do that. And sometimes you can just have the conclusion that you're not fit to lead a team. And sometimes you will need a team to be more daring, then you will put a daring leader more there. So I think it's context dependable. So you have to look at the context. But I think there's a great responsibility for the company to step up, be clear about it, be visible about it, also measure it as well. So when you have a new leader, you cannot say like, okay, good luck. No, that's not the way it works. You have to give him skills. You have to give him skills, insights.
Yeah, definitely. And that's, you've raised a good point about daring leadership. There's a lot of nuggets in what you've just said. Daring leadership, I can reference and talk about Brené Brown with her book, Dare to Lead. That's a perfect example. I know I've had a conversation with someone in a previous episode too about the negative side of that daring leadership, especially from a racial perspective. But let's look at it from the perspective of the of the leader as a whole, which you've rightly alluded to, in the sense of how do you have that agility, and one of the things that I pride so much on, especially when we talk so much about inclusive leadership, one of the things that, especially in this, like you have, multicultural, you live in a multicultural city. Because of that, you're going to have a multicultural organization. So one of the things that I pride upon is, intercultural development and a leader having cultural intelligence. And that's something that a lot of leaders do not have. And cultural intelligence and psychological safety go hand in hand. In my opinion, I'm pretty sure you feel the same way, because because of the fact that we are not only, like I said, multicultural, but we're also living in a very globalized world. That difference of opinions are going to be there. It's, there's some contention with the way the world is, but also how do leaders actually respond to that and be agile and flexible and really understand what does it say about them, right? Exactly.
Yes, being curious. I think that's one of them. If I think about skill, just being curious and dare to ask questions and really listen to the answers. That's the last part. If you just are curious enough, if you dare to ask questions, I think that's a good beginning for every leader, just to hold up on your own biases, on your own perspective, but just be open and be curious and ask questions. I think if you start with that, then you will open up a whole world and learn a lot from your team members.
Yeah. And so we've talked a lot today about human-centric organizations and living with purpose, leaders, leaders having agility and all that. So there's a lot to unpack, and leaders, and it's funny because leaders really, or organizational leaders, if you will, they have a lot on the go. They have to live the mission and purpose of the organization, like we said, but they also have to really take care of their employees so that they retain them. And because we know at the end of the day, there is a cost if you lose people within the organization, right? It has nothing to do with, partially has to do with, the fact that, yes, we're in economic time, a downturn right now, and whatnot, but also at the same time, people leave their jobs because they don't have the psychological safety that's there. That, I think, is the most important thing. If someone cannot be authentic within their organization, and if you're not meeting them halfway, you're going to lose them, right? And that's not
They will
something you want to
quit.
do. Yeah,
They will quit
exactly.
or will be silent quitting. That's even worse.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
and definitely, and that's something that we need to start thinking about as as leaders, or even so much as EDI professionals, right? Because we do this work,
Yeah.
right? And I think, yeah.
Yes. And one thing I really want to add is, because you triggered me, is I think that we as D&I professionals or people who are leading D&I, we should really work together with other disciplines and departments as well. Because as you rightfully said, like the leader has a lot of things going on. And then, for example, the D&I manager comes, well, I want this and this and this. Then the healthy and safety department comes, I want this, this, and this, this. Then the well-being company comes, I expect you to do this, this, and this. So I think it would be really helpful if those disciplines, and they are really related to each other, they are really related to each other, that they are having a more of a holistic approach of what they expect from their leaders. So it's not that like every day someone else comes with a list of requirements, but they have like one set of a requirement who helps all those disciplines and all those teams as well. So I think that would be really helpful for organizations, not to do it as like solistic, but more holistic, and like a one way approach. And so of course you have accents, and some things will be different, but if you have like a good basic, I don't care if they call it D&I, but if they work on psychological safety and it's in like a well-being part of it, and they take that part, it's okay because it's covered. So that's something I really want to enlighten. Like, please work together and make each other successful, actually.
Yeah, and that's, you've raised a good point now thinking about this conversation. I've had this talk with a few guests and just people, my friends and colleagues in the profession and whatnot. And, we talk so much about, crossing paths and interdisciplinary work and whatnot. So in your opinion, or your and using your experience, we talk so much about D&I, EDI, EDIB, however you want to call it, being siloed and being its own or part of the organization, some of it put into HR. And, and I keep on asking this question because I want to hear other people, what they think about this, especially coming from someone who prides themselves on driving and building human-centric organizations by way of healthy, healthy cultures, and having a sense of well-being, mental health, all of that. So given all of that, and given the fact that we need to look at each other from an interdisciplinary aspect, do you really think that there should be a collaborative effort, or is that something that we need to still continue put into silos, but everyone comes together to say that, hey, we're helping the leader, we're helping the organization, etc.? So I'm just curious to hear your thoughts on that.
Well, it actually depends on the organization and how it's structured. For example, if you have like a company with 11 countries, I think it's a bit more complex. But I think that every company should have like a basic, and they are interconnected with each other. All those disciplines: health, well-being, D&I work, but also HR work. And if you can find a way of working that you have like a basic, and that you have like a good understanding with each other, and like say, okay, we want to introduce this, okay, then we can help, and maybe we can implement it in our leadership program. Oh, okay, great. Well, we have a well-being program as well, and if we take that part, then we can enlighten that as well. So I think it depends on how the organization is structured, but I really, really believe that there's always a basic, because all of those disciplines really want to work on healthy, inclusive, and successful employees. I think that's all the purpose of all those departments as well. So it depends, but I think there should definitely be an integrated vision about it.
Yeah, no, exactly. It should be about collaboration and like you said, integration of all of the disciplines, so that a successful organization comes to be. So I want to conclude by asking you if there's one thing that you've learned in your career whether psychological safety or driving human-centric organizations, etc. What would your wish be in order to make that happen?
Well, one thing that I've learned, and it may sound really logical and really small, but everyone can make a change. Everyone can make a movement. And sometimes you will be surprised that something that you have said or done, and then along the way it will pop up and you're like, oh, I didn't know that I have affected someone in a positive way. So I really think that if we are able to inspire, to move an individual, and the individual will move other people as well, it will be like a snowball effect. So that was something that really came into my mind. Like, we can all be the change. And if we realize that, so if we as a company or organization really starts to nudge on that, you can be the change in your team. You can make the change. But if you make it really big and like, yeah, we want to really be an organization with inclusionists, and we really want to be people driven, people down there will think like, well, what's my impact on that? Well, yes, you have an impact, and just make it small. Sometimes the beauty is in making things small, little steps. And as a D&I professional, and I'm sure that you can recognize that, sometimes it feels like, oh, there's no movement, but there's always movement. And sometimes we're just too busy not seeing it and not noticing it. But there is movement. So I really think that don't underestimate the movement in the individual. And sometimes you just inspire and light those little lights, and that will be a bigger light, and then you will be surprised as well. So it really asks something about patience. You have to be resilient in this job. But movement is everywhere.
And great points, and you've hit the nail on the head when it comes to this work. And your experience is very prevalent in what we've discussed today, and I really appreciate your candor with this conversation. And how do we build purpose-driven organizations, if you will, or people-centric organizations as well? We can call it whatever we want. At the end of the day, we're looking at being humans. And so, Ignatia, with that, I want to thank you for being a guest today. And I just want to conclude by asking one of those other random questions, making a little fun at the end of the day. So if exactly. So, thinking about your life as a whole, you've delved into it a little bit, especially with your discovery. What would that title be if you were to write a book on your life, and why?
I think being comfortable of being me. I think that would be a great title for the book, because I think every one of us will go through a journey, and that we come to learn, be comfortable being you, and it's okay to be you, and that you will discover a lot of things and you will learn a lot of things. So that will be my book will be about discovering and being uncomfortable, and actually being comfortable being me with all those slavery background, color, skin, all those not fun part of me, because we all have parts that are not fun, and it's okay, and that you can really make an impact just to be you.
Definitely, and that was great to hear. And if that book ever comes out, I want to read it. So definitely. So thank you again.
One salary.
No, that was great. So thank you, Ignatia, for this. I really appreciate our talk today, and finally getting our conversation going. And yeah, so with that, where can people find you?
I think the most easy way is to find me on LinkedIn, because I'm posting a lot more. So that was also something that I need to be comfortable with, because I'm like, okay, if I want to be a voice, I have to stand up and really lead by example as well. So you can find me on LinkedIn. If you just type Ignatia Mannoe, you will find me. I will try to write more in English so people can follow it, but also LinkedIn has translate, so you can translate all my messages as well. So that's the reason that you have found me.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I found you because of the fact that, yes, you did write in English. Okay, that's one thing, but also at the same time, I make a conscious effort to start learning other people's languages, especially, like I said at the outset before we talked, is, I seem to have this connection with people in the Netherlands ever since I visited the Netherlands, and it's what are we now?
So there's a really
9
connection
months.
there.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So there is a learning connection there. So my Duolingo is I haven't really started yet, but my Dutch is going to be there. Exactly. So
it's a hard language to learn. So if you want to practice, you know where to find me.
Yeah, exactly. I'm going to call you up and say, okay, Ignatia,
Hello.
let's just do it. Let's just have the conversations.
So let's close the meeting in Dutch then. Then we say.
So how do you want to say?
Then we say tot ziens.
Tot ziens. There you go.
Great pronunciation. It means till the next time.
See, now I learned something. I'm going to have to go back to the other people and say, why didn't you do this with that you did? But anyway, no, that was great. Thank you, Ignatia,
Thank you for having
You're welcome. And until next time, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this episode and other episodes within the Global Conversation webcast on YouTube, Spotify, or Apple Podcasts. Thanks again, and see you soon. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.